Well, to answer our question on whether it's still safe to eat fish or seafood caught from the Pacific Ocean, let's talk about the case of the sunflower starfish in BC. There was an article published in the Canadian Geographic last year, and the article talked about the sunflower starfish found in the Vancouver area. And these starfish have been decomposing in large numbers unexpectedly. Fisheries and Oceans Canada say they don't know what's causing the starfish to die off. Let's bring in reporter Joseph Lopez in the conversation. He writes for several publications and media organizations in Canada and globally. Joseph, good morning.
Good morning, Irene, and good morning to your listeners out there. Thank you for having me here.
And
in your
thank
show.
you for joining us this morning. Tell us what's happening with the sunflower starfish found near Vancouver.
Well, actually, it was in Washington State that in June last year, 2013, that they found out that starfish, or sea stars as they're called, more technically accurate, are washing ashore dead. And and then way back in August, a few months later, a diver in the Vancouver Harbor area noticed the same phenomena. So starfish by the thousands, if not the millions, are dying. And what's happening is you see a good, healthy starfish, and a one that's dying is almost melting away, and some of their arms are breaking away from their bodies. So they die within a few days. So they're wasting. So you can obviously see that they are no longer healthy, and that's happening along the coast of in Vancouver Harbor, in Seattle, and in certain places along the coast of North America. Let me just make it clarify that there has been no radiation test done on these sea stars or starfish as they are called, and until at that point we cannot really say that radiation is the cause for their wasting syndrome. In fact, what's happening right now is they're trying to test for pathogens, whether bacterial or viral, that could be causing this. But circumstances point out that there might be a possibility of radiation being something that might lower their immune system, compromise their immune system to the point that they are maybe a virus or a pathogen is making it is getting a foundation or a ground footing in their bodies, causing them to die. So let me make it clear: there has been no radiation test on starfish or sea stars yet. So their wasting syndrome is not connected to radiation yet. But later I could tell you that circumstances point out that it might be good to test for radiation in these sea stars.
Well, granted that we can't link yet the phenomenon with the starfish. And that's because we haven't done the testing. That does not make it safe, right? We basically just don't know. We just don't know.
There are so many conflicting information out there. Okay, as you said, the Woodhouse Oceanographic Institute, as well as Canadians' own Bedford Institute of Oceanography, based in Nova Scotia, have done testing of isotopes in the Vancouver area. And as of June last year, the Bedford Institute, the one based in Nova Scotia, has found out that there are increasing levels of cesium-134, which is the same isotope released in Fukushima. And they haven't tested for the cesium-137, which is another radioactive isotope in Fukushima. But don't worry, the cesium-134 will last for 20 years, and the cesium-137 will last for 300 years. So we have plenty of time to test.
And I hope we're not, slowly dying by then. So then what's causing the starfish to die off?
Well, let me frame it that the scientists are trying to find out now. They're sending samples from the Vancouver area to Cornell University in New York, and they're testing for pathogens and for bacteria or viral. They think it might be a disease. It's possible that there are other factors like salt water content, low salt water, or temperature changes. But right now, based on their testing, they haven't found any pathogens. So that's what the mystery is all about, because there seems to be no bacteria or virus that they can point out that's causing the wasting syndrome. However, there are factors that would lead us to be concerned about radiation, even though a lot of scientists are saying that's impossible. First of all, the radiation in Fukushima, the peaking, is still ongoing. Okay, with the groundwater. Even there have been articles recently, as January this year, that 300 to 400 tons of groundwater leaking a more dangerous kind of radioisotope called strontium, with six bones, okay, of the body, are leaking in the Pacific Ocean. So, and that. And in fact, if you look at the time, Fukushima's meltdown occurred in March 2011, exactly 3 years from today. Okay, well, more or less a month. And based on scientific modeling, the radioisotope should reach our shores by this time.
Yeah.
They did arrive earlier based on the testing, but it should be arriving more by this time. So that's one factor. The second factor is based on the observations of scientists that a lot of the wasting syndrome is along the coast of Vancouver and Seattle, parts of California, and then in Mexico it ends there. Okay, goes to the theory that there's a strong ocean current called the Japan current, or it's called the Kuroshio current. If you're familiar with the geographic map, these are highways in the ocean. You remember the film Nemo?
Yes.
Where the fish Nemo goes from one place to another by riding on an ocean current.
Yep.
Okay? So similarly, there's an ocean current that goes in a clockwise circular motion above the equator. And it's called, part of it starts from Taiwan. It goes up to Japan. It's one of the strongest water currents. It's called the Japan current. And this current passes through Fukushima. But it's so strong, it actually helps keep the radiation levels in Fukushima area lower. It blows it away from the area. But the problem is this Japan current goes all the way up north to the Alaska region. Then it breaks up to the Alaska current, which goes down to Vancouver, the British Columbia area. And then another breaks up to the California current, passes through the Vancouver area, all the way down to California, then down to Mexico, and then it makes a sharp turn to the west, going back to the Philippine, Taiwan area. So it's a circular motion. So the fact that you can only see the wasting syndrome on the California coast, on the British Columbia coast, adds some sort of foundation to the fact that these radioactive isotopes in a slower speed, because they're slowing down in these areas where it's like Vancouver is bordered by Vancouver Island, where the water is less. It's not as fast as in the ocean. There's a chance maybe for the radioactive isotope to settle down and be in the water and possibly be absorbed by bottom feeders who really use water for their system, like starfish. Starfish don't have blood. They use water as their circulation mechanism in their vascular system. And so it goes around the area. One of the surprising findings that they found is there's no starfish or wasting syndrome in Hawaii, which makes sense because the circular current escapes Hawaii. Hawaii is right in the center of that clockwise current. So obviously, if you will imply the radioactive isotope will not be delivered in that area. And not observed much in Japan either, in the Fukushima area, surprisingly. Not surprisingly in the sense that the current pulls it away and it acts as a boundary so fast. But once the speed slows down in our area, then I believe the chances are high for the marine life to absorb it. I must add that I got an email 2 days ago from a scientist from Canadian Department of Fisheries and Oceans, from Dr. John Smith. And Dr. Smith said, we haven't measured radioactivity in Howe Sound, okay, which is on West Van area near Horseshoe Bay Bridge. But seawater levels on the continental shelf are only marginally above back radiation levels. So the same will be true in Howe Sound. So he said there's zero chance any starfish die-off is related to Fukushima. That's what he said.
Okay. What about in terms of the food we eat, the fish and the seafood that we buy that were caught in the Pacific Ocean? What does that mean?
Well, it means there have been testing on, you have to be concerned with fish that travels thousands of miles. They're called migratory pelagic fish. And one of the fish that travels from Japan to the Pacific, to the California coast or the North American coast and back is the Pacific bluefin tuna. Okay, so they have tested this and they have found out that they have high levels of cesium in their bodies. Okay, so I would be very careful about eating tuna. Okay. Another concern, though no testing has been done yet. There have been some testing way back in 2012, and I'm looking at the report by the Canadian Fish Inspection Agency. Okay, and based on their testing way back in 2012, okay, the levels are very low in British Columbia, but this was way back in 2011 and 2012, and the sampling was very small. They're not doing any testing right now. That's why the public should be concerned and encourage the Canadian Food Inspection Agency to redo their testing. So tuna might be a concern, and particularly salmon that travels far. And there's a particular kind of salmon that really travels to as far as the Russian the peninsula there, close to Japan, and that's the Sakai salmon.
So stay away from tuna and salmon for now.
I'm not saying that, but there has been, again, let me clear it, there's been no radiation testing on that, so we cannot really conclude that on salmon recently, but we could
just
say
to be cautious.
That there's a possibility it might be. So
Joseph,
I would be very careful about that.
And why are they not doing some testings when, there are already reports that radiation has reached the Canadian waters?
Well, that is just the concern. We don't know why they're not doing it. They should be doing it again. They should be doing it in a bigger sampling. There's reasoning out that the radiation is definitely diluted because the Pacific Ocean is so big. It is true that the Pacific Ocean will dilute the radiation, but what they found out is there might be hot spots where this radiation might be concentrated, and surprisingly, the high concentrations have been found in the Vancouver area because these waters are less. There's less movement, less speed. But I must add again that there's an email from the Vancouver Aquarium, which a few days ago, who said that the surface flow out of the strait, the one Georgia Strait, which is facing Vancouver, is outwards. It's always going out. So it's hard for radiation to come in. That's what they're saying. But the question is, you never know. And the second thing is it conflicts with the findings of a Canadian research institute called the Bedford Institute in Nova Scotia that found out that there are increasing levels of cesium-134. So what we need to encourage is the Canadian Food Inspection Agency and the Department of Fisheries and Oceans to renew their testing, to make it more extensive, not just 10 fish, and to do it more frequently, so that we can be assured. Unless we know, we can never really. I'm surprised that Dr. Smith of the Department of Fisheries and Ocean would categorically say that there's a zero chance of starfish die-off. It's like saying the Titanic will never sink.
And the sooner they do the testing, the better for the public.
The sooner they do the testing, the better for us, and the more frequent. Remember, you just can't do it once. The leakage is still going on in Fukushima. It has to be
continuous.
Okay, and in the time frame, it should be arriving by now. Unless we rule it out, we should do the testing.
Can the public do their own radiation testing?
Oh, well, you can do that. You can definitely buy Geiger counters in either through military surplus stores or through the online. Yes, they can. But again, it's not as sophisticated as the instruments as what the research institutions are using. But if you're buying fish and you just want to have or mussels, I would be concerned about mussels as well, these bottom feeders that we eat, and clams and oysters, because they are filters. So that means they really have water going through them a lot. Then I would try to make sure, if you are really that concerned, especially if you are suffering from an immunological disease, or you are pregnant, or you eat seafood a lot, then it might be something that might give you peace of mind. But the best really resource is for research institutions who have the capacity to do so and the technical capacity to detect micro levels to find out. Remember, no level of radiation is ever safe. But then also remember that we all have natural radio activity in our bodies. It occurs naturally, so you have to be aware of that as well when you do your testing, especially when it comes to bananas, which is high in potassium.
Okay, Joseph. And if they would like to learn more information about this, where can they go?
Well, they can go to the website of the Vancouver Aquarium, where where people are being asked, the public, to find out to write email what their observations are of the starfish. So there are some studies on that, and they can just Google the Woodhouse Oceanographic Institute or the Bedford Institute of Oceanography.